Welcome to the Northeast Florida Development Diaries, the place where we share the stories shaping the future of our region. This series is brought to you by the Northeast Florida Economic Development Corporation, a partnership committed to strengthening our communities, attracting investment, and expanding opportunity across Northeast Florida. I'm Amber Shepard, the Strategic Alliances Business Partner for Northeast Florida Economic Development Corporation, and your host. Each episode, we sit down with investor members, state leaders, and innovators who are driving growth, not just in boardrooms, but in neighborhoods, schools, and local businesses across our counties. These conversations shine a light on the people and programs moving our region forward and the impact their work has on our communities. This is where insight meets action. This is the Development Diaries. Today, I have the honor of welcoming our guest for episode 3, Rob Redfearn, founder and CEO of TerraStar Energy. Rob is a seasoned entrepreneur and systems driven leader with experience spanning real estate, manufacturing, design build, and clean energy development. He leads the strategic vision behind vertically integrated projects that convert waste and biomass into clean power, fuels, and value added products, aligning infrastructure, innovation, and long term economic value. Rob, it's great to have you with us today. So let's start talking about your journey and what led you to the work that you're doing today.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Amber. It's interesting. I got into this line of work about a dozen years ago. I'm a general contractor, and I had heard a story on CNN about a farmer in Vermont who was converting his cow manure into energy and selling the energy to the electric grid. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'd never heard of such a thing before. And I live in North Carolina where there's a ton of hogs, pigs. There's millions within 50 miles of my house. And the hog waste is a tremendous problem here. So I thought, well, being a general contractor, I should be able to build whatever it is he has and solve a problem here in North Carolina and set out to do that. That's a lot easier said than done. Hog manure is a very difficult thing to work with, but it did open the door in my eyes to a lot of different things. And so that particular process is called anaerobic digestion, where you take organic material, in this case, the hog waste, you put it in a big uh, uh, reactor and you heat it up to a certain temperature. And what happens is the bacteria in the manure start eating the solids, and what they respire is methane. So the methane is natural gas, and you can use that natural gas to generate electricity. So that was our business model. And so I found a couple of suppliers of equipment. Most of them were in Asia. And my theory on it was, unlike everybody else in the space, and there's not that many doing it, at least a dozen years ago, there were very few companies doing it. They were building each unit from the ground up. So they were engineering each one separately. And instead of modularizing it, which was my idea, and as a module, we could build them faster and cheaper, keeping the capital costs down, and that would increase the return on investment. So I set out to do that. Um, Not very successfully because they're very expensive. And at the time, it was very difficult to persuade somebody to take the leap of faith, as it were. It just sounded too magical that we could make energy or electricity out of hog manure. And so I kept working at it while I was working on other things, developed the same concept for dairy waste, so cow manure, and along the way discovered another technology called gasification, which is sort of the same thing, where you take solid material, usually waste material, and you heat it up to a very high temperature in a oxygen-less container. And what happens is the organic materials uh, basically fall apart. The molecules break apart into different gases. So hydrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide, all of which are volatile. And you can use those gases in the same way. You can burn them, you can put them into a turbine or a generator and generate electricity. So now we had two technologies, both of which were organized to make electricity. Along the way, it became evident that the electric utilities, although they all said they wanted to buy our electricity because it's good PR, they really didn't want to buy our electricity. So it was very difficult to get what's called a power purchase agreement. And, and to get a power purchase agreement, we had to have in order to get the financing because we're looking at pretty expensive projects in the 10 million, 20, $30 million range each and or more. And an investor's not going to give us the money unless they know we have somebody ready to buy the electricity we're going to make. Anyway, we set out to do that. And again, some difficulty with it. We did build one in Africa, in Burundi. So that opened up my eyes to other markets. So we started looking at economically depressed areas where energy was a problem. We could supply our projects in those areas to help local populations, create jobs, and so forth. And so I'd been back and forth to Africa quite a few times, did some conferences in South Africa. We have projects now ongoing in Ghana and West Africa, and some more in East Africa. Um, and coming back to it, what the problem with selling electricity is you need to be near a substation. You need to generate the electricity and be able to put it into the grid. And there's two issues with that. One is that, not especially as a farm, if we're dealing with farms, they're a long way from those substations, generally speaking. So you're looking at about $1 million a mile to run your transmission lines. That's too expensive to do. So we started looking for a way, can we find a product that would be a transportable product? And the holy grail of the industry a dozen years ago was finding a liquid fuel. So diesel or gasoline. And we did find, and the problem was that technology has been around to do that for a long time. We could take those same gases that we were making with the anaerobic digesters and the gasifiers, and we can convert them into diesel fuel or jet fuel now, for that matter. But the issue was that they were very large. So the technology that was existing and has been used for 100 years were millions of gallons of product per day. And just by definition, our projects are way smaller. So we're using manure from a couple of farms or maybe a dozen farms at the most, if we can get them. And we'd be in the market to make, a few million gallons a year, not a day. And so I found a group out of Tulsa, Oklahoma called Emerging Fuels Technology, with whom we're now licensed. They have a modular and fairly small Fischer-Tropsch system. That's the technology that makes the liquid fuel. And we can now combine all these three technologies. So we can put an anaerobic digester, a set of gasifiers, and a Fischer-Tropsch unit all on the same piece of property. We can collect a variety of waste. So whether it is manure or municipal solid waste, plastic and paper, and wood, chips, things like that. And we can separate it, sort it, process each one according to the best methodology, and then finally convert it all into diesel fuel, which is easily transportable. So now it doesn't matter how far away from a source we are or from a substation. We can put it right into a tanker truck and drive it to wherever it needs to go and sell it to whoever needs diesel, which is everybody. So if we can set our plants up, as we're talking to you in Florida, we can set up a plant to produce 7 to 10 million gallons a year. Diesel sells wholesales for right now about $2.50 a gallon. There are carbon credits available for it that raise the revenue, practically double the revenue stream. And we're solving multiple problems. We're getting rid of waste. We're creating energy. We can still make electricity if we want to, but we've sort of given up on that notion. And concentrate on making diesel fuel, which in our case now is a renewable fuel. So it's made from renewable resources. It replaces fossil fuel 100%. So it's you might have heard the expression biodiesel. It's just a little different than biodiesel. So biodiesel is you have to blend it with regular diesel because at low temperatures it's inclined to gel and it doesn't burn very well. Excuse me, and it hasn't got a long shelf life. Our product and products that come out of this emerging fuels technology Fischer-Tropsch unit are 100% compatible with any diesel engine. So it's an ASTM grade D975, or in Europe, it's an EN590, which means you can put it into any engine without fear of it messing up the warranty of the engine maker or anything like that. And now it can be used in any generator, any truck, any boat, any tractor, any combine. And what we've developed here is a nice circular economy. So if we're collecting agricultural waste from farmers, or we're collecting wood chips from wood that's blown down in a hurricane, for instance, in Florida, or where I am in North Carolina, we can grind all that stuff up, convert it to fuel, and we essentially sell the fuel back to the same groups that brought us the waste in the first place, whether it's the farmers or the departments of transportation. And we have this nice circular economy now where we've replaced fossil fuel. For the most part, most of our feedstock is renewable, so it's grown, it's a tree or it's corn stover or it's manure. It's produced, much of it's produced every single day. And all of that material has taken carbon out of the air. So in the process of growing a tree or growing corn or a pig that eats corn that has been grown, all that carbon has come out of the air. We're collecting it as manure or as waste, and we're producing fuel from it. So at the end of the day, our process has a negative carbon footprint. So in theory, every single gallon that we sell that gets burned in a vehicle reduces the amount of CO2 in the air. It's not just a net zero, it's actually a net negative because we have carbon left over after our process and we can put that carbon back in the ground. And so it's a very nice business model for a lot of reasons. It's potentially highly profitable. It is a relatively low capital cost. We can get into that shortly. Um, and
There is one additional byproduct from the process, right? The biochar.
biochar. So that's what I'm saying. So the biochar is essentially it's like charcoal. It's pretty much pure carbon. And after after we've gasified the solid material, the gases come off. You're left with this black, uh, powdery, crumbly stuff. Looks like charcoal, and it's an excellent soil additive. So that can be put back into the soil and restores the carbon that has come out of the soil. And in addition, and it's very porous, so it holds a lot of moisture, which is good for the plants to grow and things like that. And it also can be what they call charged with fertilizer. So you can put in nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium, NPK. You can load this biochar with that, and then it has the benefit of being a slow release. So unlike a chemical fertilizer where you might spread on top of the soil in a farm situation, which could run off. And I know Florida has this problem where the phosphorus and the nitrogen run off into the streams and then get carried into the ocean, and you have these algae blooms. This helps mitigate that by being more of a slow release product. So again, now we've got one more product brought back into that circular economy where we're adding that biochar back into the earth. Interestingly, several years ago, I went to Al Gore's conference. He has a series of conferences on the CO2 problem and global warming. And a bunch of years ago, I went to one and learned quite a bit. And one of the things that they talked about at this very large conference was that the farmers' fields are being depleted of carbon. And whether it's true or not, this is what he said. When you're flying over the fields that have just been plowed, he said, 30, 40, 50 years ago, they used to be dark, dark brown. Now they're light brown. And
Mm.
the interesting fact being, well, that's because the carbon has been, every time you till the soil, you you disturb the microbes that are in the soil, and you allow carbon dioxide to escape from the soil. Well, the carbon dioxide, which is CO2, there's one atom of carbon with every molecule of CO2, and it's carried away up into the sky. And so the farmers' fields have been depleted of carbon, and this is a way of us to restore back what's been lost over the last century or so. And hopefully, well, it's not hopeful. It's been shown that the biochar can enhance crop growth. So it's a little anecdotal, but one of the companies we've worked with is a fairly large farmer, and we tested our biochar on rows of his corn, and it's obvious. There's an obvious difference between the rows of corn that had the biochar applied versus the rows that did not. And we figure it's because you got more moisture content. It helps retain a lot of that NPK in the soil. A lot of benefits, and it's also good for microbial growth, which is good for the crops. So it's a great way for us to for humans, I mean, not just TerraStar, but for humans to take waste that would otherwise go to a landfill or otherwise get spread on the top of, manure is generally used as a fertilizer anyway, but they'll spread it on top of a field, and oftentimes it runs off. So here where I live in North Carolina, they'll take that hog manure and they'll spread it on say a cornfield or whatever, and it takes there are prescriptions to how much manure you can spread per acre, for instance. So the state dictates, well, you can't put more than X number of tons on an acre. And you can't put it on if it's just rained, and you can't put it on if it's going to rain, and you can't there's all sorts of limitations. And ultimately, it's to keep the bad stuff out of the streams and not out of the lakes and whatnot. So we have a way of helping to solve that problem, saving everybody a lot of money and making a valuable product in the meantime.
So with your biochar, are some of these things going to be available direct to consumer, or do you see it as a wholesale model?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So both, I think. It's Europe is way ahead of North America and selling these products and in using the different technologies. You can actually go on Amazon and buy biochar. If you do a search for biochar, it's ridiculously expensive. Um, I forget the number now, but you buy it in smallish bags. It's good for doing your house plants, and maybe if you have a backyard garden. Uh, but that's expensive because it's being brought to the consumer. It's in a nice little bag and it's got branding on it and so on, which I'm thinking we might do because of course it sells for a fortune and that would be good for us. Not at a wholesale level though. It depending on the quality because there's a range of quality depending on the initial feedstock. If it's a very high end quality biochar, it's worth $1,000 or more per ton. And we get it, just FYI, we get about a yield of about 10%. So every 100 tons of biomass we put into a gasifier, we would get roughly 10 tons of biochar back out. So we would be probably putting it in super sacks and then just selling it in bulk to probably distributors of fertilizer and so on. There is a market, and it's a growing market as farmers learn the benefits of the product, and they can make every 1% or 2% to a farmer in extra revenue as a result of if you can grow one extra cob of corn on your every acre. I mean, it starts to add up. So we can demonstrate the cost benefit of using the biochar, which will help everybody.
Absolutely. And I think the quality of the output of the vegetation would dramatically increase. So I have a little home garden and I try to grow corn and I will get many, many ears that like half of it just didn't fully develop. And of course, that comes from nutrient deficiency. So, and Florida is notoriously sandy. There's so much sand that we really could use a product like that. So, you've got a lot of projects that you have going globally.
Mhm.
Tell me what makes Florida interesting to you?
Well, first of all, it's warm.
Amen.
I'd rather be coming there in January than Minnesota. Um, so a lot of reasons. One is you have a lot of biomass. So our essentially we're taking biomass and converting it to fuel. So Florida, because it is 12-month growing season, you have plenty of biomass. It's easy to build on. It's nice and flat. You may have a bit of a problem with sand, but we don't. It makes for a nice flat easy construction. Okay. Um, I think there is a demand for, as you say, for the biochar. There's certainly a demand for the diesel. If we
Mhm.
can make our diesel there, not only can the farmers use it, but you have a large presence of ships coming and going from your ports, and they all use diesel, and they're using actually pretty crappy diesel. They're using bunker fuel, and it's a horrible uh, contaminant for the air and a lot of CO2 plus a lot of particulate matter. If we can get them to replace a gallon or two of our product for the stuff they're using, everybody would be better off. Um, so yeah, we've got a good market, end user market. We've got a good supply chain potential. You all have very good tax credit availability and which we've talked about and kind of reduces our capital costs or our exposure, which makes it way more palatable to our investors. And so it's an easier pitch all the way along, way easier than um, a place that might have you know tougher regulations or harder construction issues, things like that.
Great. I know our governor regularly touts that Florida is open for business, and we're looking forward to businesses that are high technology that add value to the community, add value to the environment. And we love the idea of renewable energy, clean energy. Here in Florida, we love our ecotourism, our lakes, our streams, our rivers, our ponds, and we want to protect those things. So it's great to connect with a group that shares those same values and wants to bring that forward. Now, thinking back, do you recall how you first got connected with the EDC?
One of our guys lives in Northeast Florida. He lives outside of Jacksonville, and he's our one of our senior project developers. And as I recall, well, I told him to look around where he lived because it makes sense. It's easier for him to sell in his own backyard than it is to sell in Africa, for instance. Uh, and I believe he contacted you, if I'm not mistaken, and struck up a conversation, and then we hit it off. And you've been a big help ever since. So, and let's be frank, that helps move our projects forward. So you're like our one of our own developers, which has been very helpful.
Yes, I think that the economic development aspect of it, I know we haven't gotten into this part of it yet, but when we were talking about the project and bringing it to the community, it's a significant capital expense investment, and then the creation of a significant number of jobs. We're potentially looking at about 100 jobs
Mhm.
being created by this project here in the community. And these are good wage paying positions that offer a great deal of opportunity for those who have perhaps no real um, experience in this field, or
Mhm.
maybe even without college degrees. And it's a great opportunity for them to build
It's
some workforce
it's
training around it.
it's huge. Let me expound on that a little bit. So, I got into this business kind of through the back door. I mean, I was a general contractor. I'm used to building things, but and I'm not an engineer, I'm first to say, but there's very little in the way of training in this line of work. I mean, there are engineers who are trained in Fischer-Tropsch technology, for instance, and others who are trained in anaerobic digestion or in gasification. Um, but nobody that I've found yet has been able to sort of put them all together. And it sounds kind of rudimentary. Like, I don't know why somebody hasn't already done it. But anyway, to blend the different technologies together on the same parcel of land and adopt a business plan that is sort of geared to those limitations. So you're keeping it small, keeping it easy to run, and so on. So if you think about it, that becomes a great opportunity for local entrepreneurs. One, there was no training, so we're all kind of starting at base one, level one. We actually are able to train people now. So if we have an interested young person, for instance, 20 years old, doesn't know what they want to do, but they have an interest in, one, you can make some money in this line of work. Two, you do not necessarily have to go to college to learn how this works. And we've talked the capital cost on a typical plant, like the ones we're looking at for Florida, are around about $150 million. So they're not cheap. Um, but the revenue derived is fairly substantial, 10 million gallons a year at $2 or $3 a gallon for the fuel, plus another couple dollars worth of carbon credits. That's $50 million a year in revenue off of that cash flow after
Mhm.
that production, and plus the biochar. So a young person or an old person, I'm not young, can get into this line of work and expect to do very well running a business. I like to say, and this is part of our business plan. I like to say I want to be the McDonald's of renewable energy. So our business strategy isn't to build one or two ginormous fuel plants, which is what our competition does, like Chevron and BP and Exxon. They build these enormous multi-billion dollar facilities at $150 million. It's a lot of money, but it's a more manageable amount of money. And we would rather build lots of smaller plants than one or two big plants. And for that reason, we need to hire a lot of people, and we need to have entrepreneurial type people, just like a McDonald's franchisee, who can come in, work with us, and help us develop the projects, uh, and then help ultimately help run those projects and own a portion of the project. And they can, anybody can do the math. They know based on that kind of revenue stream what kind of wages might be available. And then going back to the line worker jobs, our expectation is to pay pretty well compared to local or prevailing wages, because we want the best people. So if somebody wants to work hard and make a good living and kind of help the earth at the same time, this is a great way to do it. And in fact, part of another aspect of our business plan is to have options and shares available to those workers. So after a vetting period, they would actually themselves become part owners in each facility, and then so they benefit as the company benefits. It just makes it's a nice it's a nice package to kind of sell to a potential employee. It's a nice package to sell to a potential investor. So everybody's tied to the bottom line, and everybody's tied to making everything work.
It sounds like everybody wins. And, I've had the opportunity to listen to your presentation a few times. And so I know that there's always some concern about the smell and things like that. And I love that. I know you haven't touched on it yet, but you've even addressed that in keeping all of the biomass contained. So that way, surrounding neighborhoods and communities aren't plagued by
Hey, that's a
the
good, that's a
horrible
good, that's a
smell.
good point. Typically, these plants, energy plants come in, and we've all heard the news stories. They get put into low income areas, poor poverty stricken counties, whatever. And the intention, I guess, is, well, they're not going to, those folks aren't going to complain as much as somebody from a upper class neighborhood. Well, our business plan is to build lots of these plants. We call them community scale plants. So our intention is, ultimately, it probably won't happen in my lifetime, but there could be 10,000 of these plants across the United States, which incidentally is it's actually a little more than what we would need to replace every drop of diesel that the United States uses could be replaced, fossil diesel could be replaced with these 10,000 TerraStar community scale plants. Well, that would be, one plant for every 40, 50,000 people across the country. And they would, and some of them will be in distressed areas and some will be in, real nice areas. The point is we're capable of making it a very innocuous presence. So, the concern, of course, is, well, you're going to be moving cow manure or pig manure or municipal solid waste through our neighborhood. Well, it's a contained vehicle. And once it gets to our facility, everything's in a negative pressure environment. So no air escapes from our facility. And then in addition, when we're processing the material, by definition, we want to keep all the emissions. We don't want any gas escaping. We don't want anything, dripping out anywhere. So we've got a motivation to keep it all contained. And I swear, where we build these things, you won't even know that they're there. I mean, they're all beautiful and they're not particularly huge. They're 40, 50 acres. And they're not, like everybody's used to refineries with tall billowing smokestacks and things like that. This is not that at all. This is very clean, very modern. And I like to think it's sort of the difference between an old style car manufacturing plant and the new, Tesla plant, which looks more like they're building computers than they're building cars. And ours is kind of the same idea. It's very clean and organized and structured and things like that.
That sounds very sophisticated. So, thinking back, you came on board as a member investor with the EDC back in October. What inspired you to take the plunge and become an investor member?
Well, the community involvement more than anything, also the assistance. But we want to be part of our program is to be community oriented, community minded, support local business organizations, the chambers of commerce, organizations like yours, and also really play an active part in the local community. So the more we can do that, the better. And it's actually a line item on our budget is to donate a certain amount of our revenue stream to local activities that help everybody, that benefit everybody.
I love that. And from your perspective, can you share how the EDC has helped create opportunities or visibility for your organization so far?
Yeah, you've made some introductions to a couple other groups already in Florida who are working and where there's been some overlap in what I think they could provide to us and vice versa. So that's been good. Certainly, you've introduced us to the county commissioners and some of the mayors and other influential people. So any of us in business understand that networking and who is the best thing in the world. I mean, it's almost better than what you know. And so you've already introduced us to a number of folks who expanding our networks via their networks have brought potential investors to the table. We are helping us find land and find other communities around Florida that are interested. Um, what else? I mean, finding the offtake agreements for us or helping us get the offtake agreements arranged, helping us find the feedstock. There are three components to what we need to build the facility. One is we have to know we have the feedstock availability. We have to have an offtake agreement. So somebody has to say, yeah, we will buy all your diesel fuel or electricity. And we have to have the land. And those three things we need to have to get the money. And so you've been, and your organization's been very helpful in helping us put those those three legs of a stool for, I hate that analogy, but that is what it is. Those three legs of the stool we've got into place now. And we already have two bond companies looking at doing these $150 million bond issues to finance the construction of these facilities. So had it not been for that, we wouldn't have those.
Absolutely. I like to say that our community is where businesses come to thrive. And my personal background is in global executive management consulting. I recognize that when businesses are looking to expand, each location really is its own startup.
Mhm.
And more often than not, the common theme that I hear from business leaders is they're looking for the ecosystem. So our team really has spent a great deal of time working to build that ecosystem and make sure that we're building the relationships and the connections ahead of time that will help your organization be successful when you move here. Um, from your perspective, what would you say to other businesses that are looking to come to the community, that you would see for them the value in a membership with the EDC?
Well, I think they would get out of it the same thing we've gotten out of it, which is, you're essentially a partner in a lot of respects. So you're like us having another developer on board. Um, I would say any new venture would be good to start there because of you've got very good tax incentives, as we've talked about, especially if it's a larger investment. Um, and even if it's an existing company who's looking to expand, I think that the business community in Florida is more prone to helping a new business locate. Now, part of that is that you're in a rural area. So where you live or where we're talking about now is very similar to mine, where I live here. And over the decades, uh, centuries, the rural areas have always gotten short shift, I think. And there's an opportunity right now in the renewable energy sector for new companies to position themselves in some of these rural areas versus the, more expensive, sometimes maybe more, superficially attractive areas. But if you come to a rural area, you're welcomed with open arms. I mean, I noticed it here in North Carolina when I moved here. That was 30 years ago, and I see the same thing where you are. Um, Compared to trying to get into a market like a Charlotte, North Carolina, or New York City, or something like that, where you're just one of 1,000 or one of 1 million businesses. You're down in a smaller community like this. You're kind of a big fish in a little pond, and people take notice and they're happy to help. Everybody's very friendly and very nice and very welcoming. So I think any company that's looking to expand, not necessarily in the renewable sector, but any sort of high tech area or even low tech area, I think coming to an area like yours makes a lot of sense. And combined with that, and I've been one of the reasons I moved here from Toronto. I'm from Toronto, Canada originally, was that I guess, predicted that eventually it wasn't going to matter where you lived. I mean, we moved here to this small town in rural North Carolina because my gut told me eventually it wouldn't matter where we are. And sure enough, here we are. It took 30 years, but we can get anything we can that you want to buy, you can get tomorrow delivered to your door. I mean, that beats the heck out of sitting in traffic for an hour and a half going somewhere. We can get more done in a small town in a shorter period of time than you could ever do in a big city. So, new entrepreneurs who are like me, you only have a certain number of hours in a day. I don't want to spend time sitting in traffic. I don't want to be going to meetings. I don't want to be driving all over, going to the lawyer and the post office and having it take an hour between each appointment. Whereas and this is an undervalued benefit, I guess, of being in a smaller town or rural area is, we can go from the post office to the lawyer to the dry cleaner to the bank and do it all in 30 minutes. You don't do that anywhere else, and our time's valuable. So anybody that's, I've been a very big advocate of companies from Canada to look at coming to the States, and if they were to come to the States, look at to rural areas. I think that might be a little hard sell this next few years, but for Canadians that is. But nonetheless, I think that anybody from a big city should look at moving to a small town, and then that would help. Spreads the economics around, balances out a lot of income disparity, and makes a lot of people happy.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, as we're wrapping up our conversation today, you've mentioned that you have some needs, the three pillars of the stool,
Mhm.
and one of those big components is the diesel offtake. And I'm sure that we will have people in our audience that are listening to this, and they're thinking, hey, I'd like to get involved in that. How can they get in touch with you to talk about some of that offtake of that diesel and negotiate
Sure.
some pricing? And maybe we can share a little bit about some of that negotiation
Thanks.
flexibility that you have.
Thanks for bringing it up because it actually is the most critical of the three legs of that stool, the proverbial stool. It is the most important one. So, or the hardest one for us to get. You would think that everybody would want to buy our diesel. It's very difficult to get a commitment, and it has to be a lengthy commitment. So we need to get our financing. The finance people look for a minimum of a 5-year commitment to buy, 7 to 10 million gallons a year. It doesn't have to come up from one customer necessarily, but we need to be able to know that we've got a home for every gallon of diesel that we're going to make, and it has to be agreed to in writing and then contracted and so on. I can assure anybody that is going to buy our product that it is higher cetane value. That's a measure of the energy content. It's a higher cetane value than regular fossil diesel. It's zero sulfur. It is zero CO2 emission or even a negative carbon footprint, like I said. So our perfect customer for that would be some relatively high volume users of diesel. So it could be a school system or a municipality, some large farming operations that use a lot of diesel in their operations. Department of Transportations would be great. It could be Florida, it could be anywhere. Now, as far as making the connections, there's only so much me and my guys can do. And as far as making calls to these potential off takers, if there are people listening to this podcast who have connections, who know somebody or some company that would buy their diesel and that they can make the introduction, we do pay a finder's fee essentially for that. It goes for in perpetuity as long as the contract lasts. And right now that percentage is 2% off of everything that customer buys forever, in order to help us set up that contract. And that is built into the pricing of our product. Now, we can, unlike a lot of our competition, and by virtue of our business plan, this makes us sort of separates us from the others out there, is that we're actually able to make a gallon of diesel and sell it for less than the cost of a gallon of fossil fuel. And that's at today's diesel prices. So, diesel's about as low as it's been in years as far as price goes. We can beat that price. So if a company were to come along and say, yeah, we'll sign a 5-year contract to buy 10 million gallons a year, let's talk about price. We can give them a discount and charge them less than what they're currently paying to whoever it is they're buying it from. And of course, they're helping the environment at the same time. It's a zero, it's a environmentally sensitive product. So they should jump on board. I would love it if people could email us, just let us know that they're interested. that they have folks that they want to discuss an offtake agreement with. We'll protect them. Like if they tell us who it is they're talking with, we'll make sure that nobody steps on their toes and jumps in front of them. And what we'd like to do is get as many contracts, not just in Florida, but everywhere, to know that we've got potential customers, and that'll help us figure out where we're going to build our next plant. Because we want
Absolutely.
to put them wherever the need is the highest or wherever we know we have the need. And that is part of the reason why our costs are low. Our transportation costs are way lower than somebody who's piped crude oil all the way from Alberta down to Houston and refined it and then has to pipeline it back up to somewhere else. Uh, we don't have to worry about those transportation costs. We're making the fuel in the community where we're planning to sell it.
And I love the flexibility of your business model. Like, I could just see this synergistic relationship between large development contractors that do land clearing that would require diesel equipment, and that could lead to like a symbiotic relationship of
Sure,
them providing some bio feedstock in return for
sure.
some discounted pricing and things of that nature. So I love that it's flexible and it seems that it's a win-win-win for everybody. Rob, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insight and your journey and the incredible impact that you're making on Northeast Florida. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Northeast Florida Development Diaries. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe, like, and share this episode, and stay connected as we continue highlighting the leaders and innovators driving growth across our region.
Thanks, Amber.